Thank you very much. He does that for me, so I feel like a movie star. Welcome to the February meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission. We'll call the meeting to order. We have a quorum of commissioners present. It's 5 o'clock, February 13th, 2023. First thing on the agenda for tonight, as always, is citizen communications. And we see that we have some citizens here. Happy to see them. And I've got a card up here from Chip Dents. Chip, would you like to come address the commission?
I would.
Okay.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Chip Dents. I've got a couple of items to speak to the Riverside Park, specifically, two of which apply specifically to the golf course, one of which would apply to the entire park. First off, I'd like to commend the city on the job they've done maintaining the golf course. It's been a real pleasure to play there, and I think the city's done a really remarkable job of maintaining the course. I understand that the number of rounds has been significant. I had a chat with the mayor last week, and he said that it was pretty much self-sustaining. There was enough play to sustain the deal. However, part of what I would request that you have a look at is reopening the Blue Nine. For years, we had 27 holes, and it was the pace of play was much better when we had the 27 holes, especially on those days when there are tournaments. The members, or if you would, the annual pass holders, often couldn't get a tee time because of the tournament going on. Whereas when we had 27 holes, that was available to us. And I think if you were to poll the annual pass holders, I think you'd find an overwhelming majority that would be in favor of reopening the Blue Nine. And as related to that, some of you may know that it was closed partially, and I don't know who or how that decision was made, but when the city took over the course, they opened a driving range, which, according to my observation, and it might be something that you should investigate, doesn't appear to be very revenue producing. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of activity on the driving range as compared to what kind of revenue you could generate with having a functional another nine. In addition to that, I think we need to find a way to employ a marshal on the golf course. They have rules, and most of us play by the rules. And golf is generally a pretty good gentleman's sport, and most of us play nicely by the rules. But one example would be oftentimes the rules prohibit more than 4 players in a group, and just today I personally witnessed 4 groups of 5 or more. And without somebody on the course to help monitor the rules, anyway, employing a marshal would be something I would recommend that you have a look at. And then the third item would apply to the entire park. Would be to control the wild hogs. I mean, the damage is just devastating. I mean, every day. I played well over 200 rounds last year on that course, and every day there is more damage. And I would submit that if you were to allow, and I don't know what the politics behind it are, but if you would allow the police department that are highly trained, and they have night goggles and night instruments to shoot them. I mean, the trapping isn't working. And the amount of time and effort I see the employees trying to repair and doing a less than adequate job of repairing the hog damage every day, that needs to be addressed. And I think that, the city's got very, very capable people, and I think you need to look at that again. Now, with that said, thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Dents, thanks very much.
Questions?
Any questions from anybody on the commission for Mr. Dents?
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission this afternoon before we move on into the rest of the meeting agenda? If not, we'll go ahead and move on to item C on the agenda, which is the consideration and approval of the minutes of the last meeting, which was the workshop held on January 7th. Those minutes are attached, and I'll entertain a motion to accept them or modify them in any way that's appropriate.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from the January meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion, it's been moved and second to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved, and we'll move on into other business. The first thing on that list is D, number 1. I'd like to, if it's okay with the commission, I'd like to maybe change the agenda just a touch and ask, I know that Rolando's here. I wondered if Jason, would you like to, is Jason still here, or did he step outside?
Stepped out.
Okay, all right. Well, I thought we might let Jason and Rolando talk to us a little bit about the concerns that were voiced. Just give us a brief report on kind of what the situation is and what the, okay. Rolando, you're free to, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you guys for having me this
I
evening.
know you got to get somewhere, so let's.
Yes, I have a staff meeting this evening trying
Right,
to get ready
right.
for spring. So yes, just kind of going through Mr. Dibbs's comments here. I'll kind of just go down the list from what I got here on his notes. Yes, as the golf course has picked up in traffic, we have some days that pace of play is not where we would like it to be. Overall, the golf course and in our policy states that the round of golf should be played in 4 hours and 15 minutes. Using our GPS tracking data, we're actually at 3 hours and 48 minutes right now. And that gets a little bit skewed because you have some guys that are playing as a single or playing as a twosome. They can play faster some days. But we also have days where it's cart path only that takes rounds, 30 to 45 minutes longer. So all in all, I think a pretty good average and a fair pace of play. But it can be issues on some days. Even today, we probably did 125 rounds of golf. It's a shorter day because of daylight. So it gets tough to find a tee time some days. He's totally correct with that. But as a testament to the golf course, it's gotten better. It's picked up more traffic, and that's kind of what we want to happen. We want to see more rounds, more revenue, so we can hopefully kind of push that to do another project to the golf course. Tournament days, he has a good point having an additional 9 holes available for those tournament days. Depending on the size of an event, it can be shut down for the better part of a day. I've got high school events that will be coming up in the spring, so those can take 8:30 to about 3 o'clock, and if we're not into time change yet, then those days can kind of get lost. You get a couple hours to play a few holes, 9 holes at that. So that is an opportunity with those tournament days. We're hosting anywhere from 25 to about 30 events. Last year brought in about $58,000 in revenue. The amount that it would take to get the Blue Golf Course going would be significantly higher than that. I would almost say if that was a choice, I would rather see no tournaments and take a little bit of hit of revenue rather than trying to repair the Blue Golf Course. The hog damage is significant. There's a few greens that need to be rebuilt, and we're doing some other things to the driving range at the moment that would need to be probably looked at before we finish some of those items. The range, the past couple of years, I brought some of our numbers with us. Range opened in May of 2019. For that fiscal year, we did a little over $11,000. Excuse me, this is range and practice course put together. So practice course, we charge $14 to play out there. And the driving range, just depending on what size bucket you want, it's $4, $6, or $9. So that fiscal year 18-19 was a little over $11,000. 19-20 was $38,000. 2021 was almost $53,000. Last year was down to $43,000, and this year we're on pace for low to mid 40s. So there is some revenue that's generated from that part of the golf course. I don't want you guys to think that it's a zero by any means. And there's some other pieces that may not be seen by the entire group. As far as the community aspect, having a practice course and a driving range gives people the opportunity to be introduced to golf, to not have to go straight out to the golf course and go play. They can hit balls on the driving range so they feel comfortable. They can use our short game area until they feel comfortable actually going out to the golf course. Having a 5-hole practice course does the same thing, whether it's young kids or people that are just taking up the game. It gives them an area to go play a few holes, get comfortable before they actually go out to the 9 holes where, maybe not more accomplished golfers, but guys that have been playing for a while understand what's going on, and, they can feel rushed or just not feel comfortable being out on a regular golf course. So there's some other, for the whole of the community, there's some other benefits to that. Same thing with our high school teams. We use those areas for the high school teams when we have them in the afternoons during the spring. Gives them an opportunity to practice, gives them a few holes to play in the afternoons rather than sending them out to the golf course, slowing down pace of play, or removing tee times that we could potentially sell those afternoons. So there are some other areas that we're able to hit with that practice course area. Let's see here with the... going back to Mr. Denton's comments about a marshal, the GPS has helped with some of those items. Again, the pace of play, when you get groups that pair up, if we have a staff member available, we will send them out to try to break up groups to help with pace of play. It's more of a weekend thing than during the week. Groups of 4 are preferred on the golf course, but we do also have times when groups of singles or twosomes are going out. Fivesomes are allowed. If they're allowed by the golf shop. So as long as we know what's going on for the day, if there's room for that to happen, we have some regulars, other members, just like Mr. Dent's, that play in their normal groups. And if they can stay on pace of play and they have an odd number for the day, we'll allow them to go out and play in their fivesome. We give everybody a heads up that if we're allowing them to do that, they need to keep up with the group in front of them, and then ultimately they need to meet the pace of play that we have set for the golf course. And again, those fivesomes and those types of groups are all put into this overall average of being just under 4 hours. So even with those, they're still meeting pace of play on a fairly regular basis. We have had issues as of late with new golfers and people maybe that haven't played as many rounds as others, playing in larger groups, playing in groups of 6 or groups of 7, thinking that they are playing fast because they're playing a scramble or a team format. That's not really the case. If you have 6 or 7 people, you're still waiting on 5 or 6 other people to hit a golf ball. So that can be an issue some days. However, that's not all the time. And the staff is usually pretty good about getting to those groups. It's, that interaction, having a marshal and being able to patrol those kind of things on the golf course can be a touchy matter. You don't want to interrupt somebody's time or what should be time away from the house or family or kids or whatever those things are while they're out playing golf, but you want to be able to adhere to the rules. Being able to employ somebody, which I feel my staff does a really good job of interacting with customers and interacting the right way. And those are the things that kind of can get misconstrued if you have just a marshal that's there. It's like having a police officer on the golf course. If they're coming to you, they're only coming with bad news. That's what people typically will see. They think, oh my gosh, here comes this guy and he's gonna tell me this or he's gonna tell me that. So we do our best to use a GPS system. It does have two-way communication. So as we see some of these groups that are paired up or we see too many carts on a hole, we'll use the GPS to send messages first. And if that doesn't get across, then we'll send a staff member out to be able to help with those things. Hog control has been tough. Part of those holes on the blue golf course have been torn up pretty bad by the wild hog population. Again, a few of those greens would need to be rebuilt to be able to do the reopening of that blue golf course, as well as some of the fairways. They've had a really good time. The golf course, because it's typically irrigated, it has soft ground, and that's what they're looking for. So they do enjoy themselves out there more times than we would like to see. But where we've done a few things. We've met actually with several different departments within the city, and Jason can speak on this a little bit more, but we've done what we can at this point to try to get PD to come out and hunt for us. I think it's still an overall safety issue with the park. Even though we have posted hours of it being closed, there's still people that are in the park even at night, and that's when we would hunt hogs. Hogs should be hunted in the early morning hours. Our maintenance guys see them pretty often as they come in at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, so we know that's when they're active and traveling the golf course. We've trapped a few. The government-appointed trapper that we have has caught a few of them, but if you guys have any idea about wild hogs and how they populate, they move fast, faster than the rate that we're catching them. So that has been a tough part, and it's for the entire golf course. It's not just out on the blue golf course. We have damage on all parts. We feed off-site at this point to try to give them an area to, if they want to mess something up, we give them an area to try to stay there to keep them from, other areas that we're currently using, namely the Bane 18 that we play. Anything else for you?
Just a couple of questions, Rolando. Out of I know these numbers, Jason's reports them to us every month, and I can't recall them right off the top of my head, but, I mean, how many, the group of people that are members that play out there, I mean, how many, how much of the total amount of play out there is represented by the people who are members of the?
About 40% at this point.
Okay,
So
all right.
yeah, I've definitely got numbers for all that stuff. But
Okay.
it's gotten to a better trend because I see the member revenue as obviously a portion of our overall revenue. So when you put those two together, I'd like for that percentage to equal the percentage of rounds that they're playing, meaning that our bigger chunk of revenue is coming from the general public. But at the moment, it's about 60-40, and members being 40% of our play.
And I'm sure you guys have some sort of regular communication channel with the members of some sort. I mean,
Yes, sir. I
to
send out
kind of talk about these kind of things? Or?
I send out a monthly newsletter. Typically not anything that includes revenue or financials.
Right.
It includes just kind of a general course update for the most part, events and event schedule for the month, or sometimes a little bit past the month as we get into spring. It'll encompass, February's had part of March. March will have obviously all of March, but April and potentially even into May to try to get ahead of some of these things. So I'm hoping that they're reading them. Can't always say that they are, and then we'll print them out and put them around the golf shop as well, hanging them up, hoping that people will take a peek at them while they're there.
I was just wondering about any thoughts you might have about how to kind of reach out and try to address some of these concerns with some of the, some of the countervailing issues, which are, which you've kind of mentioned.
Sure.
Do we used to have, was there formerly a marshal on the course usually?
Potentially, I couldn't I couldn't honestly tell you what they used prior to the city taking over. Since I've been there, since we've reopened the golf course, we've never had a marshal. It's not something that we've to this point have been able to work into our budget as far as staff hours. We're pretty thin already, so we're trying to get by with what we have.
Yeah.
That's just not something that we've tried to put into the budget at this point.
Yeah.
GPS was our potential answer as far as having a marshal that will work all days and be there all hours because they're always on or it's available. And again, it gives us some data to be able to track for pace of play because that's typically, when you talk about a marshal, that's typically the issue is pace of play, wanting to be able to steer that. So that's been, giving us some actual numbers to be able to use to say, hey, it's maybe not as bad as everybody thinks it is. But until this point, I don't know honestly what they did prior to that. They may or may not have marshals. I couldn't tell you. I can tell you my previous position in San Antonio, we did anywhere from 42 to 44,000 rounds a year, but we did have a team of marshals, and it was all part-time guys, but they were able to split up all 7 days.
Yeah.
We had a starter, and then we had an on-course marshal. But again, you're talking 10 to 12,000 more rounds than we're currently doing.
It of course, it's that busy, especially in the city, in a bigger city and all. That 4 hour and 15 minute.
Still applies.
Was that kind of what y'all were? I'm just trying to figure out is that a realistic figure for our community, if you will, or is that?
Well, something that,
I mean, I'm just tossing it out there, for a long time, we visited about this briefly, that there's, things have kind of been done certain ways and not necessarily in the way that, not necessarily in a structured way, but Would 4 hours and 15 minutes as an average round time be considered by most of the golfers that play here to be really long, or would that be, we're not there now. It sounds like, would you say 3 hours and 45 minutes?
3 hours and 48 minutes, yes, sir,
Yeah.
is what we average. I think there'd be a lot of bias to that question based on who you ask. I think some people
Yeah.
feel like they play, and again, not having previous data to go off of, I couldn't tell you if, we're on point or not. We don't get that many complaints. We get more complaints from some of the same guys more often. And again, it goes back to group size. If these guys are playing in a single or a twosome or threesome, then they're obviously going to play faster than foursomes. So if they get stuck behind some of those groups, it could be perception of the day. But without having actual numbers, and that's what I enjoy about the GPS, is I can go back and say, for any one day, I can go and track and say, hey, we played, 3 hours and 30 minutes these days. There's some days that move faster, but as the golf course gets busier, that I feel like 4 hours and 50 minutes is pretty comfortable. It was slightly higher at my previous job in San Antonio, but we were also doing 10 or 12,000 more rounds a year. So it was important to keep things moving, and it can ruin your day if it gets longer than that. It makes the golf round less enjoyable. But again, I think it would go back to personal perception on
Yeah.
whether how you play or your group, or what those guys actually think they're playing in.
Just thinking in terms of, kind of what a aspirational goal would be for us to, do we want to get the course do we want to utilize the course to the extent that that's what it takes to play golf, is over 4 hours, on a regular basis, or would we maybe seek some sort of an alternative plan if we were going towards that as our normal situation?
Yeah, the plan to make people play faster would get them to play the appropriate tees. You get a lot of guys that aren't skilled enough to play the set of tees that they want to play. So if they would actually play up a set of tees, they would play better, play faster, have fewer strokes, and we could curb some of that pace of play. But it'd be a lot of it would take some doing. It would take some doing.
It's complicated.
Yeah, but I understand. Yes, I mean we could do our best to try to set a different goal, or moving from 348 down to 340 as a starting point. I see it as every 12, 13, 14 minutes is about how long you should play a hole. And again, that would be with 4 players, so that can be skewed based on if you usually play with one other buddy or 2 other buddies, then I would expect that group to play faster. So there's definitely some variables in there that can change all of that.
Just looking at the dynamic of the membership base, have you ever thought, or would it even be feasible to have like a volunteer position for a marshal?
We have, when we originally started the golf course, we asked for that. I don't think that was something that was allowed through legal.
Okay.
I don't remember what the exact terms were. All of our positions in my previous job were all paid. My understanding is that it should be a paid position, or even potentially some type of a trade that's worked out based on minimum wage, and then basically them using that wage to build up a bank to pay for a round of golf, something along those lines. So it's not something that we were able to do initially.
Okay.
And volunteers, they are that. I mean, you could have a really busy Saturday and, hey, it's beautiful outside, I can't make it in today. I've got a tee time at 10 o'clock or something like that, So those can be tough.
Gotcha.
I have a question. So you said you had 25 to 30 tournament events. On tournament days, do you also have some tee times? Because your tournaments will be going off either morning or afternoon, so there are tee times available.
Correct, yeah. It depends on the tournament size. So when we get into high school events, it's typically they're taking up the chunk of the day. But we have a lot of local associations that may only have 40 or 48 players. So depending on what time they want to start, we'll send out tee times before them, and then we'll give them a little bit of buffer behind them, and then we'll start tee times after those guys. So we've got one local association that plays pretty regularly with us, and they have 36 to 40 guys on their event days. So they might have a group of tee times from 9 to 11 that's blocked out. And we'll send tee times before them, and then we'll send tee times after them.
That's really not a problem for the number of tee times available.
Not for 100% of the events.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe half to 75%, maybe at the most, that we would be taking an entire day or an entire morning, based on if it's a morning shotgun. I've never done actually any afternoon events other than some really small 16 and 20 player groups. So those we end up setting up as tee times anyway. So those are not issues. I would be speaking to shotgun starts, to where everybody's starting one time and taking up a chunk of the morning, basically.
Do the annual pass holders, do they have preferential treatment with that pass holder? Or, I mean, with that, do they get to make tee times in advance as opposed to the standing public, or?
No, everybody has up to 2 weeks to make tee times in advance, and they can make them really at will. The one restriction they would have is online. You can only make a tee time at a time. You would have to use either a separate name or a separate credit card and have somebody else make that tee time. So they're available to make tee times up to 2 weeks in advance, just like everybody else.
So the gentleman that came and spoke today before us, he had a concern about multiple, he said today, he said multiple, he saw 4 groups of 5 or more playing today. Does he normally play in a twosome or a single?
Most of the time he's by himself, sometimes with another person. He plays early mornings, so he's there typically from 7-ish to about 9. That's probably why he doesn't see a whole lot of people on the driving range. There's some guys that are warming up, but typically if we're selling large buckets, it's mid-morning and later throughout the day that guys are coming out to hit a bucket of balls, or if they're really going to buy a large bucket, if they're going to do some practicing, that's typically not 7 o'clock in the morning, or same thing for the weekends. He has a couple guys that he'll play with, but typically it's in a smaller group. So yeah, just depends. And the 5-some, again, if it's some regulars that we know, or if it's a group from out of town and they can come in and be nice about it and come to the golf shop and be like, hey, we thought we were going to have 4 today, we've got 5. Can we play in our group of 5? We'll give them a chance to start the front 9, and if they can't keep up with pace of play, then we'll ask them to split up into a 3 or into a 2 and, move faster to the back 9. But again, typically not an issue. It's really, we have more issues on the days when we're just really busy than on the days when we're kind of busy and have, might have a 5-some or a few 5-somes out today.
And that's common. I mean, that's my understanding, that's really common.
Yep.
I mean, you're going to allow it sometimes, but you're going to let people know before and after, that come after them, what's ahead of them, and
Yes.
they're going to need to play through, so.
Yes, and if it's a 5-some that's with any of our regular groups, or if it's a group of guys that have 13 for the day and they're going to have 2 4-somes and a 5-some, we'll ask them to send that 5-some out first. So if that 5-some is slow, we know the guys behind them are gonna push them and gonna yell at them because they know each other, and they can tell them keep up pace of play or let's get moving kind of thing. So we try to arrange those groups to help with issues that could come up. Does it work all the time? Probably not, but they typically move around pretty well. I don't see it being that big of an issue, but again, perception.
With regards to the driving range and the practice facility, I think it's a great community benefit to have that, and I would hate to see that go away. Are there any plans for the Blue 9 at all? I don't remember how they came to be and how they went away, so.
The Blue 9 was built in the mid-90s. I don't know what the real thought behind building it was, other than maybe helping with pace of play. I don't know if they used to have issues at that point. For us, putting in a practice course was more of a community benefit and trying to build the next level of golfers or next group of golfers. The guys that aren't playing, I went to our annual PGA conference here a couple weeks ago, and they talked about 9% of the population is golfers. How do we hit the other 91%? Well, the practice course gives us an opportunity to hit at least part of that other 91% and start bringing in additional rounds or creating new golfers through a practice area or a practice course. Current items that we're working on for the practice course, we're having a artificial turf line put in here in the next month. So that's been approved, and we are working on getting that started. That'll help us with just overall turf conditions on the hitting deck, because we'll be able to use that turfed area. As soon as we have a tractor of our own for the golf course, we'll also be putting in a practice bunker for that practice area. That's something that we don't currently have. We do have bunkers out on the golf course, but we don't have one on the practice course or on our short game area. So another piece, and all that stuff can be done in-house. It's really just moving dirt and using some of the sand that we're going to buy anyways for the golf course. Outside of that, we've got a couple things coming up in the next year's budget that we'd like to continue to improve that practice area. But really, we see it as still a practice area, not really thinking about going back to the full 9 holes. Not that we can't. It would definitely take some investment to get to that point, though.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have something else then.
Sure.
So with regards to the feral hogs, so they're a problem all over golf
Yes.
courses and parks, and, I see it as I walk by Hiller House. I mean,
Yeah.
I see it. So are you guys able to call Texas Wildlife Services to come in and trap and or kill? Or I heard you say that you have some hesitancy about actually killing or exterminating on the golf course, I'm gonna say it nicely, because of this, and I understand that, but
We have an appointed government hunter and trapper. So if we have our own traps for the golf course, we actually caught one last night, and he calls into dispatch, lets them know that he's going to be releasing his firearm, but he'll come and take care of the hog and move it for us as well. But it's been very rare that he actually hunts at night. I still think the concern for the most part, from my understanding, is just any general public, even though they shouldn't be in the park, still being in the park while a firearm is going off. Those hogs are pretty quick, and typically it's not a one-shot gun that you're hunting with those things. You're wanting something that can light off a few shots, and hopefully you hit one or at least knock them down for a little bit.
yeah, because I don't know if y'all know, but those feral hogs are very quick and very smart. And they have made their way out of traps, they have figured out how to get out of traps, and they know how to avoid people. And when they're, when they're looking for water and food, they're just gonna tear it up. So it's a tough situation to control, and they breed so quickly. So it's tough.
It's tough. And it's not just an us problem, it's a Texas problem too. I mean, there's,
Right.
Part two is you have the river right there, so
Yeah.
they can come across the river. You can do everything, control them in the park, but they can all come
Yeah.
across the river the
yeah,
next
it's
night.
dry.
so.
It's tough. It's a tough one.
Other comments or questions?
If you don't mind, just to expand on a couple items. One of them is the tee times. I don't know if I was outside talking with those folks, so I'm not sure if Rolando had mentioned this or not, but we are looking at reducing our tee time intervals that we have, going from 10 minutes to more of like 8. And so that way we'll have a little bit more opportunity for folks to be able to come in and actually get a tee time. So we gain another tee time, I think, per hour, moving it that way. So we will have some additional tee times available after we make that change. Additionally, Mr. Keeling, you had mentioned, what are we going to do kind of proactively to try to address some of this? Rolando and I were talking a little bit this afternoon, and it's one of the comments and thoughts that we had was really just having like a monthly or a bi-monthly, coffee with the pro, and allowing people to sit down and have any conversations that they want to with Rolando, making it, obviously open to all of the golfers and anybody who wants to attend. So we are kind of thinking about those things so that way we could be more proactive instead of reactive. And then also one of the other projects that we are working on too is just the addition of a parking lot that's going to be right there by the driving range. So there will be more opportunity for more activity, if you will, over at the driving range area. And that will be that's something Kimberly's already working on right now to receive bids. So that'll be rocking and rolling here sometime soon. So just wanted to make those 3 comments really quickly in regards to the golf course.
All right.
Thank you.
Rolando, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming. Okay, let's go back to resume normal programming. Item D1 is Riverside Park Boating Access Grant. Jason, you want to?
I appreciate it. Thank y'all. How's everybody doing this evening?
Good.
Great, excellent. Yeah, so the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department has multiple grant opportunities. One of the grant opportunities that we are currently pursuing is the Boating Access Grant. Basically, what we're looking at doing is starting to refurbish the existing boat ramp that we have that's right across the street from the Rose Garden. And then also in the master plan, we had identified an area near the pump house for a kayak takeout with a pavilion. And so we are pursuing the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department grant for those 2 opportunities. I provided some information to you regarding the grant. It's in the handout. The grant ceiling for that is $500,000. I believe it's a 75%, 25% match. Just for reference, the projects that we're looking at are probably going to be a little bit over that $500,000. I would say anywhere between $750,000, probably something like that. But we haven't gotten there yet. We don't know those exact numbers. So Kimberly is the one who's spearheading this with our grant administrator, Katie Conley. She'd been here before to the commission and provided some updates, I think, when the duck pond was starting to take place in regards to that grant. So What we wanted to do was, I'm sorry. So the grant opened up a week ago, and it's going to be due on the first week of May. We are already engaging consulting firms and reaching out to actually Ms. McGee to help us with some of the data in regards to the boat ramp across from the Rose Garden. So we feel like we're going to have a really good shot at this. Really are trying to be proactive, get as much data as we can. Very similar to the Duck Pond grant, really just starting to dig our heels into it. So part of the grant requirement is to allow public responses or a public forum. We've already accomplished that in a couple different ways, but one of those being the master plan. But we want to be able to have this opportunity as well for the community to come and make any additional comments. So we do plan on having this this item on the agenda next month if we don't have it completely submitted. But yeah, Kimberly, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Good evening. So as Jason said, that we really want to, we've already done some engaging with the community in the past with like the master plan. We'd like to put it on the agenda, and we would like to offer one more opportunity for the community to give input. Public input is a really big part of the grant, so as much feedback and support as we can get, which there's a lot of supporting organizations, which is great. So we just want to really encourage public feedback and support for this.
That's really all I have. Any questions that you may have, we'll be happy to answer them.
I appreciate as a taxpayer, y'all going out for grants and not making us fund it all. So that's awesome. I love that. Kudos.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Or at least not with those taxes.
Yeah.
So,
Quadruples our dollars, right?
right, no, it does. That's good. That's good to hear. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you.
Tree City USA. That's still something, Jason,
is still
Alfaro
something.
wheelhouse.
So I had these, actually this and the tree ordinance kind of together, but I just had them separate. That way, if there were any questions about Tree City USA, we could get that over. But I did provide another handout for the Tree City USA. I know we had talked about this a while back, sometime last year, I believe, as far as becoming a Tree City USA. There are 4 requirements that are listed there on the handout, which quite honestly, we're already starting to work on a lot of that stuff on the back end. Environmental Services is going to assist us with some of the $2 per capita that you see there. That's a requirement in regards to their brush pickup. We've started capturing some of the data as far as, tree plantings and some of the tree trimming and maintenance items that are taking place just within Parks and Rec. Otherwise, the tree ordinance is going to be the next thing, and that's obviously on the agenda tonight. Just at least trying to get your comments and thoughts on that. But the whole goal would be to really push this over to legal and present y'all a better bylaws draft because, again, the commission will be a dual role. It will be a Parks and Recreation Commission as well as a tree board or a tree commission. So that's really the next couple of steps, making sure that you're okay with some of the language that we have within the tree ordinance, and then pushing it over to legal and bringing it back to you for approval. So again, Tree City USA, just wanted to make sure that you had the requirements in front of you in case you had any questions.
Did everybody get that copy of the tree ordinance or draft tree ordinance anyway? That came around a couple of weeks ago, I think. Yeah. So we'll be a tree board on certain occasions.
Yes, sir. I believe the requirement is the tree board has to meet 4 times per year. So each quarter we would basically transition into another board.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, good. I think everybody's been, excited about getting back our Tree City USA designation.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you all for the support on that.
Sure. Next is active transportation plan.
All right, so Mr. Keeling.
Yeah, I was going to say, dude, we can tag team on this one, I guess, a little bit, but just to let the commission know that believe it was the first steering committee meeting that was held with the group that will be working with the planning consultant to come up with this active transportation plan. If you'll recall, that was a part of our master plan. One of the suggestions of our consultants was that that we employ another consultant to take a hard look at an active transportation plan. And this all, this, to me, this is interesting because it kind of fits in between, what we do as parks, but it also reaches into stuff like streets and other elements that really aren't in our bailiwick. So it's our plan dealt with it because, we talked a lot about trails. We talked a lot about, potentially linear parks and things like that. And so this would key into that, but this wouldn't be all of what that is. But the first meeting went well. I think that there was a good deal of excitement about getting moving on this. You might recall that we had that Paseo de Victoria
Yes, sir.
plan that was done by someone several years ago that kind of laid out a possible starting point for trails to get around Victoria and connect up various things like, the parks and educational facilities and shopping and other things like that. And so I think they'll start kind of with that and work with that and move towards, coming up with a more comprehensive plan. One of the things that we talked about in the meeting was, we'll do kind of like we did with our planning process. There'll be public engagement and all those kind of things. And we did talk about, because I think parks users would be people who would be interested in the park, in the active transportation plan. We talked about, utilizing the parks programs as a way of kind of advertising that this was going on and helping get the word out that we needed feedback from people and comments from them about their thoughts on how this would work. But anyway, you were also involved in probably more so than me, but anyway.
That was perfect. Mr. Keeling had mentioned surveys, and that is something that we had talked about as a group, is how are we going to get the word out? And we did provide Planning and Development Department all of our contacts and stakeholder groups for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So, and I think something that was mentioned in that meeting was that they feel like we definitely have a good stakeholder group as far as recreation is concerned. So again, like the Kiwanis that use the park for the Riverside ride and those other user groups. And I think one of their areas that they wanted to try to focus on were the non-recreational folks, right? The people that actually need to use that transportation to be able to go back and forth to either school or work or what have you. And so the idea was, as Mr. Keeling mentioned, really targeting and looking at those large events that we host and providing a booth or some kind of a survey material at those events. And so we will assist them as much as possible with that endeavor. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of that, you're right, a lot of the transportation needs would be fulfilling, would be fulfilling the needs of people who just, they need some alternative way to get around, and maybe, better access through wheelchair ramps and sidewalks and things like that. And
has there been any engagement from the universities or the college in that active transportation plan?
I don't know that there's any. That's one area that I really kind of want to be sure we focus on, because and it's, it's a city priority too, because the city's funding, or the city is doing the work on the new the new
Ben Wilson.
Ben Wilson, right.
I know that's something Bob Glenn had a real heart for, is he wanted, there to be more interaction between the college and the city about, active transportation. So I'm wondering if anybody, again.
And there's no question, one of the topics they're going to have to take up and deal with at some point, and there's no way it's not going to be, is how do you get from your residence hall across Houston Highway over to the campus? I mean,
yeah, other than the little Jaguar buses.
That's a difficult.
Yeah. I know that there's always it's always a struggle to, you feel like you do as much as you can to, you know, publicize it and put it out there on Facebook and everything, and then somebody's gonna be like, well, I didn't know anything about it. It's like, yeah, you know, you can never do enough, but I'm thinking that they would be a big stakeholder. They've got additional funding. They've definitely got a hand in what's going on in the growth in Victoria. Just didn't know if there had been anybody who reached out to try to communicate that, and if not, I'm happy to make an introduction or something if I can.
Okay.
So.
I will, I'll circle back around to Maggie. Maggie in our planning and development is the one who's spearheading this project, but I've got a note here to touch base with her, and then I'll reconnect with you on that. I know there was conversation about the UHV corridor because there was comment about Red River and how that, basically that Red River is a major thoroughfare and it actually dumps right into Riverside Park.
Yeah.
And so that's completely, on point with your comments.
You got the hospital, both colleges,
Yep.
And it goes right into the park. And
Yep, and I think St. Joe's right off Red River as well, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken. And so that's a huge, connection that we need to make. In addition to that, we did have, not necessarily focusing on the active transportation plan, but we did have a meeting with City Manager's office, Julie, Maggie, a couple of other folks that were involved in that meeting. But yeah, that was the basis of the conversation was not only sidewalks, but just wayfinding too, how do we get around? And so the city is definitely taking a different approach in that regard, making sure that we have that connectivity, making sure that we have that signage and that identification, so that way people know, where to go in our community. Folks that just moved here too. So we've got maybe last year we had more folks that just moved here, but nonetheless, we do have more folks within our organization too that are moving here, and so they need to know where to go, so.
All right. Anything else on that from anybody? All right. Let's talk about the budget. Jason offered to give us a little bit of information
sir.
about the budgeting process. So.
All right, so I'm not gonna throw out a bunch of numbers to you, but I did want to just provide you a quick update on the budget. We did talk during our workshop last month about some just budget in general. Our budget is going to be due on the 27th of this month. We have already started, well, I don't want to say started conversation. We started conversation last year, but really, fine tuning some of our numbers that we have. And so I wanted to provide you just a really quick overview of some of those high level items that we're looking at. So at the golf course, one of our biggest items is going to be just the increase in our lease agreement for our new carts. So we're at the end of our current lease with 50 carts, so we'll be renewing our lease for those 50 carts. Something that's really crazy is the 20 carts that we purchased last year, released a little over a year ago. Those were about $89 per month per cart. Same exact carts, just 2023 version. I think they're about $115 a pop per month. So you can just see the increase of over a year and a half. Each golf cart is now costing us an additional $25, $30 a piece per month. So there's going to be a significant cost there.
Is that a 5-year lease on those?
Yes, sir. It's a 5-year lease. Excuse me. On the golf course maintenance side, we are putting in for the largest expense that we have really in there is a break room for our golf course maintenance staff. Currently, they don't have one, and so we need to make sure that we have an area for them to be able to get out of the heat and the cold, and so we've added that into the budget. That's in tune, I think, of about $45,000 is the last quote that we got. And then last but not least is the driving range. There are, of course, a couple other projects in there, but the driving range, as Rolando had mentioned, it's a really great area. We are trying to increase that area's traffic as well as just the amenities that it has. And so we are looking at having some kind of a pavilion or some kind of a cover over the hitting box or the tee box on the driving range. So again, just to kind of help out with some of that afternoon sun, especially in the summertime, and hopefully we drive a little bit more folks out that way. That's pretty much it for the golf course. There's a couple of pieces of equipment in there, nothing too crazy, but big ticket items, that's kind of what we're looking at. For Parks and Recreation, we are looking at some additional costs with personnel. We're looking at asking for additional personnel just to help with some project management and just maintenance in general. So that's pretty much all that we're asking on personnel side. And then some of the bigger projects that we have for Parks and Recreation, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank now. Yeah, thank you. Our playground replacement plans, and so one of those playgrounds would be, the next one in line is Brownson Park. And so we'll be looking at replacing the Brownson Park playground. Again, our goal is to replace playgrounds, say every year, but pretty much every year. And every 15 to 20 years, we're coming back to the start of it and replacing a new playground. And that's about the lifespan of them. And so, anyway, so Brownson is going to be the next one that we have on the books, if you will, to be replaced. We do have some security. I know there were security concerns from the commission. That was one of the priorities that came out of the master plan. And so everything, we've identified some of those areas for additional lighting. And so we're going to be adding some of that in the budget as well. Of course, trails. Trail connectivity is always a big thing. And we just, yes, sir.
You mentioned on your staff and stuff, the budgeting for additional staff. Did the park ranger idea, is that this time or not this time? Or did we just not feel like we could get there?
I honestly don't, I don't think that there's an appetite for that just quite yet, unfortunately. And I think that we'll have a better end result if we go with something that we have a little more data behind, which are the hours that we have in our maintenance. The fact that we've added the golf course, not the golf course, the soccer fields, the fact that we've added the gazebo, the fact that we're gonna add the dog park, those are large pieces of amenities that we're going to have to upkeep. That and then projects. So we are looking at, some kind of a project manager, project management type position, and then another maintenance position. With the hope that we can collect more data with PD and maybe find another way that we could present the park ranger idea. Yes, sir. I'm all for it. I've tried 2 years in a row, and I don't know if it's there's an appetite for it though. Yes, sir. And then we have the community center, and I'll let Kimberly speak to some of that.
So with the community center, we're looking at a lot of the same kind of operations as before, budgeting as before, with sink replacement, table and chair replacement, things like that. So typical recurring expenses.
Yeah, something with those tables and chairs too. Those have never been on a reoccurring purchase until last year. For some reason, I don't know why, but last year was the first year that we were able to put in what was needed for a replacement. And the idea behind it, I think, is it's either every 5 or 6 years we'll be back around to those replacements. I'll have to dig in my notes, but that was a big thing. It was actually getting some kind of a replacement plan for those chairs and tables that get used all of the time.
And then security over at the community center as well, with making sure people aren't coming into the building and accessing other parts of the building that aren't lockable due to fire hazards. So.
Yeah, and quite honestly, we found out that there had been some concerns, I guess, from the community center staff. Apparently, during the large events, there had been an individual that has sneaked into the community center and was spending the night in one of the below the bleachers in the arena. And so obviously that's a safety concern when we have our employees going around and doing their checks. They're there by themselves at times, and it's first thing in the morning or super late at night, and that's the last thing that we need, because we both we employ both male and female, and we need to make sure that everybody's safe. So I know that was a really big concern from our community center staff when we talked with them recently. But that's pretty much it. Really, again, a lot of what we're trying to do with the master plan is identify some of those areas that you had mentioned during the workshop and try to get them knocked out a little bit at a time.
Okay.
But I can get a more detailed report to you for next month if you'd like, and just simply send it out to you like I did with the tree ordinance, if you'd like. Okay. I mean, unless there's something too that the commission wanted to add to the budget, was another reason why we wanted to bring this up. This was like the 11th hour.
Yeah. Well, we can, what's the wish list? Everybody just want to go ahead? No, so I just wanted to ask about the Ranger thing, because I knew that was something we talked about, so.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other comments or thoughts?
I had one. So the one we discussed whereby we would, people that were developers, adding something in there regarding park development, how does that, you said Julie's handling that, or?
Yes, sir. So that would be the parkland dedication, is I
Yes,
think what you're
yes,
speaking
yes.
to? Yes, sir. So Julie and her team is
Okay.
spearheading the UDO, which is the Unified Development Ordinance, or the code. And that really dictates what happens as far as the parkland dedication and those types of policies. They are already in that process of receiving information from stakeholders. They've already presented something to the city council, I think back in December. One of those presentations was asking about parkland dedication to city council, and city council, gave the go-ahead to continue moving down that path. So I believe it's Friesen Nichols is the consulting firm that is assisting Julie and her team with that UDO update. I would hope that everything would be finalized by the end of this year. It's a lot bigger project, for sure.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jason, thank you very much for that.
Yes, sir.
Departmental report?
Oh, man, we're here already?
Yep, that's it.
That was quick. I like that. Okay, cool. All right, so quite honestly, I kept this kind of brief because I knew we had a healthy agenda, and I thought we were actually going to be a little bit later. So thank y'all. Oh, I'm sorry. Can everybody see this? We're good? Okay. All right, so we're just going to go right into Parks and Recreation, the park maintenance aspect of it. So the park staff, parks team has been doing a really great job. We've been dealing with some of the storm. You can see on that bottom left-hand picture, there was a big tree that came down in Riverside Park, and that got removed. We actually went over to the Hiller House. You can see that middle picture on the bottom. We did some tree trimming training. And what that did was that helped set us up for tree trimming along Main Street. So we went out about a week or so ago, went down Main Street and trimmed the bulk of the trees. We'll be coming back and removing those dead trees along Main Street probably over the next couple of weeks. One of the main focuses that we've been having was the youth sports complex, actually all of our ball fields. It's not the best picture, but they have really been doing a good job with removing the lips that we have on around some of the bases, or even basically around all the bases. So they've been getting that down to grade, so then that way, as you're rounding the bases, you don't have a hill to go up or anything to trip over. It's a nice, smooth, even surface. So they've been doing that over at the youth sports complex, as well as Low and Rippamani fields. So that's been taking a lot of time, and they've done a really great job. If you haven't been by Low and Rippamani lately, I would encourage you to go take a look. One of the other areas that they've been focusing on is the adult sports complex. That is the sports complex that's on the other side of the community center. It's the smaller of the two. But we just went through a concessionaire proposal, and so we were able to get a new concessionaire out there, and the park maintenance staff has been doing a great job with refurbishing that concession stand. So I didn't grab a picture on Friday when I went by there, but it looks like night and day. So it's a huge difference. So part of that deferred maintenance that we talked about before, I mean, we're trying to catch back up to it, a little bit at a time, but we're trying to catch back up. Some of the things that you might have, I don't know, you might have missed these or not, I'm not sure, but the park bollards were those wooden poles, if you will, that are in the ground, for lack of better terms. But it's basically to stop people from driving off of the roadway and going into the grass. In Riverside, there was a lot of them that were decayed. There were a lot of them that were just falling over. Some of them that just didn't make any sense because there were 5 of them, and then there was a 40-foot gap where it just, again, didn't make sense. So Parks team has been going through the parks and removing those bollards. We're trying to be mindful and removing the ones that make sense. Some of the ones that we are removing, we will come back to and place better barricades there, if you will, just because of the location. Maybe there's a sidewalk that's right next to, you know, a roadway, something along those lines. So that is something that you'll see throughout the parks. You'll see some of those bollards being removed. But again, we are going to come back and just be mindful on where we place them. That way there's not bollards just all over the parks.
Have the metal ones with the cable just been a maintenance nightmare, or have they been effective, or?
I would say yes to both. They have been effective, I feel like, to a certain extent, but they are a maintenance nightmare. I would say that almost every weekend there's a pole or two that are run over. Part of the problem with that is those poles are really close to the roadway, so there's no give or take. I mean, you're off the road and you're hitting a pole. Part of it too is that that we're doing with these bollards, they don't need to be everywhere, in my opinion. They don't need to be throughout the entire park roadway, you know, and that's where we're looking at those certain areas. Maybe they're outlined in where the parking is, or if they're within a certain proximity to a sidewalk. But there are certain areas that
I think they impede the use of the road by, you know, people are running and stuff like that. I mean, it makes it, you know, walkers and runners and people that, you know, they're going to, I mean, they have the sidewalks and stuff too, but I mean, you know, the roads are also used for that some.
And I definitely understand the idea behind the cable, but I also feel like that's a tripping hazard, especially when we have those open areas and people just are wanting to go from basically one side of the street to the other side. I mean, you're having to hop over a 3-foot cable, basically. So yes, so anytime you see us out there, that's, you know, we've got a whole bunch of wooden poles in the back of the truck. That's what they're doing.
That's good. I personally like that better anyway, I think.
Cool. Recreation programming. I will defer this to Kimberly.
So in January, we had a new recreation coordinator join us, Elijah Ramos. He joins us from Corpus Christi. He's been great to have on our team. And so in January, the team worked really hard to help with the Winter Games of Texas. And they've implemented the story trail. And then we've been getting our footing for the year and getting some programs planned out for this month and the rest of the year. So this month, we're looking at doing a movie night with the Queen City community on Thursday night. And we're also going to be working with Teens Grounded. They are a local nonprofit that works with teens. And so we're going to be meeting with them, and we're going to be implementing some teen programs based on their input, which is we're really excited about. And then we've also did an umpires clinic. We have registration open for kickball and softball, and then we were able to support Sun Valley Ranch this past weekend as well at their outdoor family expo with our pop-up park. So. And Toddlers on the Trail. That's still going strong.
One of the really cool things, though, about Toddlers on the Trail is that Gabby, one of our recreation coordinators, I think saw the need for a different type of Toddlers on the Trail. And so what she's exploring right now is a Spanish-only Toddlers on the Trail program that would be conducted in Spanish, because a lot of the parents that come out with some of the younger kids to her current Toddlers on the Trail, you know, are very, I guess, You know, they have, I don't want to say just Spanish speaking, but they're very fluent in Spanish. And so I think there's a demographic there that we're not hitting. And so we need to be able to create additional programs for that. And so I know Gabby had mentioned that to me not too long ago, but she was looking into creating almost like a dual Toddlers on the Trail. Not to say that, you know, anybody's always invited to the Toddlers on the Trail program, but this one would just be conducted in Spanish.
And you said the movie night is this Thursday? Mm-hmm. Okay. In Queen City Park?
Christ Kitchen.
Oh, it's
But
at,
it's- Yeah, for the Queen City community at Christ Kitchen.
gotcha.
I think we're watching 50 First Dates.
Awesome. Any questions on recreation programs and events? Okay. Keep rocking and rolling then. Golf course. So the golf course is, it's doing really well. And, you know, Rolando was up here speaking to all those, he's got all those numbers in the back of his head. I mean, he can spit those out like it's nothing. But here are some stats for you. At the end of the month, we had $118,213 worth of revenue. Again, our expenses are about $90,000 a month. And so you can see that there's a surplus there. We did have a fairly decent amount of rounds this year, or this month. We had a little over 2,200 rounds for the month of January. We had 99 folks that participated in tournament rounds, and we had 264 practice rounds. Some of the big events that are going to be taking place this month, Rolando actually mentioned both of these, but VISD is going to have a tournament there at Riverside for 2 days, and then Industrial ISD is going to be out there that following weekend. And then, of course, we do have TAF that's going to take place on the first weekend of March. Wanted to present that to y'all because we won't meet before that time frame. So golf course is doing really well. Be happy to answer any questions on the financials.
One question, I guess, and I understand it's kind of maybe is a Rolando question, but I mean, it seems like if you were to have additional holes open, would it really impact the revenue? Do you think, I mean, do you think it would, it's sort of hard for me to see how it would increase revenue if you did have those additional holes available. I don't know.
I mean, potentially in the long run, I think when we look at it, because the way that the golf course is set up, they're an enterprise fund, and so we have their business plan. So we try to look at it from a business standpoint. So potentially, yes, but I think the upfront cost of getting it to where it needs to be able to actually bring in additional revenue is going to offset that tremendously. And I mean,
Take a long time to
years
break
before we're able to get a cost recovery from that. So without putting numbers to it, though, I don't want to lie to you and tell you it's X number, it take this long to be able to recoup our costs. But I can tell you it's a substantial amount of money just in the condition that they're in right now, to be able to turn them around to something that's playable, to where they're willing to pay that fee.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, is there room for the practice round, for the practice course, the driving range, and 9 holes? I thought the practice range and the driving range took up part of the old Blue 9, right?
That's what I thought.
Correct.
5 of the 9 holes.
It's 5, right?
Correct. It's 5 of the 9 holes. Because of the driving range, it took, the other 4 away.
So it'd have to be one or the other. I mean, to go back to the Blue 9, it'd be a new plan.
Correct.
Yeah, you need more room.
You need
Yeah.
more room, right?
Yeah, basically, we'd have to rebuild 4 holes again
Right.
And get rid of the practice.
and get rid of the driving range
And update the irrigation.
and update the irrigation and
greens.
update the current 5 that aren't
Yeah,
probably up to par the way the other 18 are.
And increase maintenance.
you just used a
Exactly.
golfing pun right there.
That really was
I didn't know if y'all caught that or
I
not,
did.
but you
noticed
did.
it too. I noticed it too.
But
Well, that's,
This may sound so off. The RV park? Maybe turn that into a driving range. It'd probably bring a lot more revenue in.
Yeah,
Just,
we could look
I
at that
don't know
too.
why, I just had to
Pretty
say
heavily, the
that.
RV park is pretty heavily used though, right?
Oh, come on, how much did, you
We-
told us that doesn't make anything, right?
Well, so we closed it down in October. September? October. We closed it down in October because of the issues that we were seeing. We opened it up back in November, and I asked Jessica to run some reports for us. And over the 2 months, it was December and January, or is that what it was? So December and January, we've increased our revenues double. We've doubled our revenues. So what we're doing is actually making us positive revenue.
right,
Yes, yes, sir. So I believe last year revenues were sitting around $4,500, close to 5,000 for those 2 months. This year, those same 2 months were 9,000. Yes, sir.
Good job.
Well, and also,
Appreciate it. Thank
John, the driving range really needs to be somewhat close to the golf shop because you've got staff running back and forth to collect balls and you've got just oversight. So it needs to be in the near proximity, so.
And quite honestly, it's not in the best location right now.
Okay,
Just visibility, as Ms. Eater said, visibility from clubhouse to driving range is non-existent. And so we find ourselves, with people walking away with the balls, if you will, or, just walk-ups that we don't know about because the clubhouse does not have that visual, that line of sight, right, to the driving range. And that's another thing that we're looking at too, is how can we address that? Okay, well, here you go. Here's the golf stats. Again, increasing over this year, rounds to date are up. The biggest, I think, discrepancy that you may see is going to be the January revenue. You'll see last year it was at $88,000. This year it's at $118,000. A huge increase. Part of that, I'm not sure if you may recall the membership. Last year, we had paused the membership renewal for January, which is typically when we see, December, January is typically when we see that large increase. And so you can even see it too in December under the golf revenues from the 77 to 178. But we get a lot of our members usually in December and January to renew. That didn't take place last year until February or March because we were kind of working through just budget and some financials. And so that got all caught back up to where it should be. But doing a heck of a job. As of this year, we are at $469,000 in revenues versus last year, same time frame, almost $160,000 difference. On the plus side.
Impressive.
Thank you.
And even the rounds, I mean, go back, I mean, I
Yes, ma'am.
know the rounds are going to be dependent upon weather, but that's a nice increase.
Yes, ma'am. I brag about the golf course all the time. They do great. Community center stats. Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions on this? Okay. So community center, quite honestly, they've been dealing with livestock for the last week and a half or two. So, and I know that's all they're going to be dealing with. So livestock is obviously a big deal for the community. And so they're, heavy into the livestock show at this point in time. So for city meetings or trainings, we had one event, Parks and Recreation related, which was TAF. We had 11 non-city functions, which would be weddings, quinceañeras, et cetera, for total rentals of 16 for the month of January. Sports tourism. I will start by saying Michelle Myers, unfortunately, is no longer with the city. She went ahead and moved on to the city of Beeville. I believe she's taking she's going to be their communications director, I believe, for the city of Beeville, or community engagement director, one or the other. So sports tournaments and events are still moving forward, but we've started divvying out those responsibilities elsewhere. So TAF is primarily on Kimberly and I. The facilities assessment is I'm going to be spearheading that and be the point of contact for that. And then, of course, we have the American Junior Golf Association coming in April to Riverside, and Rolando will be spearheading that. So the goal is to get the position out to the public this week, and hope that we can get somebody on board as quickly as possible. So with that being said, January was great for TAF. We had over 1,000 amateur athletes that came to Victoria. It was a really great event. A lot of folks throughout the community. Really great event. Excited about having it here here in a couple weeks, and then again not too shortly after that. I can tell you that TAF is very excited about Victoria. They want to, we talked with some of the TAF executive director, and I think he would like to have conversations about extending his contract with the city for 2 more years. So in essence, what we would be looking at is potentially hosting TAF through 2026. So it's very great for the city, I guess, and tourism as a whole. So all we can do is continue to move up and from here and expand our games that we have. 2023 games, as I mentioned, it's going to be taking place the 25th through 26th of February, and then again on March 4th, 5th, and 6th. I guess the biggest one that we will have in February will be the softball fields at the YSC. There's going to be a large, backtrack, it's going to be a huge tournament. 60 teams, I believe, registered for softball, right?
The largest the city of Victoria has ever seen.
Wow, that's great.
Record breaking. Sorry.
So, but it is running parallel with the livestock show. And so there is going to be a whole lot happening on that side of town that weekend. So just so y'all are aware, and I believe everybody got their goodie bags and everything.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Jessica.
The next things are the kayak race. We're actually going to be working with Commissioner McGee on this one. That'll be in March. So TAF, we're going to expand our TAF games to be to kayak to be part of that. And then of course our winter game scramble that we'll have over at Riverside Park. So those will all be in March.
And disc golf will be going on, tennis will be going on, and flag football as well.
Yep.
For winter games in March.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll send out a list of all the events that are taking place in February and March of the winter games, and then give you those locations for it, so that way you have it handy if you decide to drop in. At least you have the availability or the times that they'll be available there. So we'll send that out to the commission this week.
Thank you.
All right. So I really don't have anything here for you because what I wanted to do was take a moment, switch gears to another presentation and just show you the duck pond. I can give you verbally just a quick update on the dog park. And then if you have any questions as it relates to any other projects, please let me know. The dog park is going to be moving forward this week. We had a couple change orders, if you will, as far as the fencing is concerned, and so we needed to make sure that we had the proper fencing. There's a few more items that had to be addressed by our consultant, so he had to make some design changes, very, very minimal. But nonetheless, the work is going to commence this week with By Grace on site at the dog park. So, yeah. I think everything should be rocking and rolling pretty quickly now that they're going to be on site this week. So let me transition into this other PowerPoint really quickly.
While he's getting that ready, we did meet with Izzy Drain's family last week and share with them some of the input that we received about, the memorial and the entrance for the dog park, and they were really receptive and they really loved the ideas. So we're still working on that. They sold over 200 pavers.
Wow.
So Go them.
Yes, yeah, we'll be meeting with the consultant again, I think in a couple of weeks to start finalizing what those thoughts are, and then we'll bring that to the commission for just approval. So this was something that we presented to the city at the Citizens Academy actually last week. What I thought was interesting here is we had 1,200 people in attendance at our programs, and as you know, our recreation services department's really small. So I thought that was great. But this is the big one I wanted to show y'all. So the duck pond, right? So this is the design of it. This is actually when we first started. This was one of the first couple of days that we had. Of course, we removed all of the trees in the gazebo. As much as it hurts my heart to look at that picture and those trees down, I do know that they went to a good cause because we ended up using those for fish habitat. So you might see 3 piles of debris down there. No, the contractors weren't lazy. That was all part of the project. So that'll help out with fish habitat in the future. This is one of the last pictures that we have of that divider, if you will, between the large pond and the small pond. This is actually one of the last pictures that you'll ever see of that pond full the way that it is until it has a boardwalk across it in a couple of months. We started removing all of the water. Some of y'all may or may not remember that there was a wooden little pier right there, and you can see it underneath all that muck and mud, but it just goes to show you how much was underwater. It's just amazing. Oh yeah, these guys. So I got to give a shout out to our folks who were dedicated
Jeremy.
employees and naturalists and conservationists, and they went out there through the muck and got 100 fish in a 5-gallon bucket and moved them to, well, I say not all 100 fish in a 5-gallon bucket, but one at a time, if you will, and they moved them to the other ponds. So
What's the coolest thing y'all found at the bottom of the duck pond?
There were some hard drives down there.
Were they really?
Yes.
Oh.
There was some what?
Hard drive?
Computer hard drives.
Oh, my God.
I like took pictures and texted PD and was like, hey. Sorry.
So she picked it up, and then like the Mission Impossible thing like went on, right? Yeah, self-destruct.
No body.
Here's another picture of them actually starting to grade out some of those corners and starting to round it out, starting to take shape a little bit better. In this picture here, you can start to see them laying the foundation of that retaining wall, and so you can see that it kind of looks like a pathway, if you will, along that edge. So they were working on that. Here they start to open up the second pond and really try to start to connect it. They were having issues at this point with a lot of rain, and that's been the theme of this project. And then, of course, another picture you could actually see on the right-hand side, the concrete foundation with some of that rebar poking out. And then one of the last pictures that, of course, this was a couple of weeks ago, and they've done substantially a lot more. But this is one of the last pictures that we have of them just grading out that big area. So things are starting to come along. They are starting to move in a positive direction. You can see here, here's the top of that sidewalk. So if you go out there right now, this is actually pretty close to what it looks like today. There are some minor concerns that we had going into last week's meeting with our consultant and the contractor. Those have already been, remedied, and we don't have any concern over it. So all of that to say that we're still on track with our October opening, and there's a lot more to come. So next things will be the pier, the gazebo, and the boardwalk, and then fill in that 3.5 acre pond back up.
Looking good.
Just wanted to provide you a quick, just wanted to provide you a quick update on the duck pond, because I know it's a very large project, and I know the community is interested in seeing that
Are
completed.
they gonna fill it with river water or let it naturally fill?
So it'll be well water. Basically, the water that we get for our irrigation system we'll be filling that up.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, like, who's the project manager for this? Who's overseeing it? You? Or the city engineer's office, or?
So yes, I do, but our consultant is a project manager as well. So that's part of his contract was not only design and construction documents, but project management.
So who audits the construction?
We do. So it would be internal, it would be myself. All of the stuff that has to get tested obviously goes through engineering and everything all of their results get pushed on. And then, of course, we have our grant administrator, because this is a grant through TPWD. She has, some oversight to some of that, and so she makes sure that those,
What milestones are
numbers are
being
good.
met and so forth?
yes, sir, yeah. Yeah, that part of it's kind of on me. I don't say kind of, it is on me.
And so like when you hire this project manager position, would that be something they would oversee?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir. And I say that kind of jokingly, but, and even during our workshop, we had talked with the commission about some of the organizational changes that we had to try to open up some bandwidth for our department. Quite honestly, I mean, between Kimberly and I mean, she's handling the bulk of the projects as of right now, but there's so many more that are coming down the pipeline. I don't even know how we're going to be able to get a handle on it if we don't have additional help, because our supervisors are all focused in the day-to-day operations. They're not dealing with the larger projects.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Well, that's all I have for projects, unless there's anything from the commission or anything related to the department. I'd be more than happy to answer.
The comments on the tree ordinance?
Oh,
How
yes,
do you
sir.
want those?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I didn't have the agenda in front of me, but we did send out the tree ordinance. Did everybody have an opportunity to look at that? Was there anything pressing in there that we needed to look at? Or were there so many comments that I just need to take this offline and we redo?
I'll send you a separate email.
Okay, sounds good. Was there any, like, in that, was there
Nothing
any?
glaring,
Okay.
just being me, I guess I'll say that.
I need that. Yes, so I mean, if you have any comments, I guess you can send them my way, and I'll make sure that I include those in next month's.
Okay. Anybody have any future items that we want to put on the agenda going forward? Mike? Nope, okay, all right. Well, hearing none, then I think we are adjourned at 6:28 or so on,
All right, thank y'all.
all right,
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jason, thank you.